Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth. Written by the Hanged Man 317 and read by Purple Star. Chapter 33. Mad Dash and Knockdown. If Era didn't know any better, she'd have wondered if she'd made a couple enemies with that little stunt. Thankfully, Era did know better. She knew she didn't have to wonder. Bakugou would be gunning for her now. Which was fine. Gunning. Humor. But she'd made her point. She was in the running. She was ready to turn around and start taking shots at Ice Boy. Midoriya was flying overhead. Midoriya was clinging to a piece of scrap metal. Midoriya was taking the lead. Era grinned, feral and vicious, as all three of the squabbling frontrunners found themselves scrambling to play catch-up. Todoroki finally relented and began to freeze the ground beneath him as Bakugou propelled himself forward using his quirk, focus clearly shifted from trying to murder her. For her own part, Era took advantage of the path Todoroki left in his wake, the ground hardened by permafrost, but not quite as treacherous as it had been at the beginning of the race. So he could control the output. And he was tiring? Possible. Or perhaps his focus was now on speed instead of incapacitating his opponents. Era still had her rifle tight in her grasp, feeling it rock against her body with every step. Her muscles burned and stretched and snapped beneath her skin, tearing and reforming as she pushed herself to gain on the two powerhouses of Class 1A. And Midoriya. Fucking Midoriya. It was one thing for Era to ride the explosions forward, to use the mines as a means of propulsion. Era couldn't brake. She wasn't delicate in the way real people were. Nothing to be done about it now. Although it seemed that Midoriya himself was rapidly hurtling towards the consequences of his actions. And for all of his constant overthinking, had he really not thought of a way to land? As Bakugou and the Ice Boy fought a little further ahead, Era held back just enough to see how Midoriya shifted the piece of metal in his grasp. How he swung it around and slammed it into the ground, right between the two boys. She was close enough to get caught up in the fringes of the blast, but she'd managed to avoid the worst of it. And he was off again, like a fucking rocket. Holy shit. She was never underestimating that kid again. Era regained her footing, hastily readying her rifle once more as he charged forward on light feet. She was still in fourth, but maybe... The Ice Boy had continued to freeze the mines in front of him, so she wouldn't be able to knock him off course. Bakugou, though. Bringing the rifle up to her shoulder, Era didn't break stride as she fired off another shot into the ground at Bakugou's feet. Debris from the explosion bit harsh, red lines into her skin, reminding her that she was probably too close to be playing games like this, but it did the job nicely. Bakugou went flying off course again, and Era was able to dart past him in Ice Boy's wake, with another well-placed shot at her own feet. At last, they were clear of the minefield, Ice Boy shooting ahead, as Midoriya sprinted to maintain his slight lead, and Era could recognize the loss when she saw it. With a grim smile, she aimed the gun back at Bakugou and let off one last shot, allowing herself a breath of laughter at his furious screech before swinging the rifle back to rest between her shoulders and breaking into an all-out sprint. A sharp crackle of explosions let her know that he had regained his footing and was now hurtling towards her, but no matter. Her legs burned as she forced her body past its natural limits, heedless of snapping tendons or tearing ligaments, flesh and sinew writhing through her legs like worms beneath her skin. She felt explosions hot on her back as she flew across the finish line. The roar in the crowd was deafening. But louder still was the blood rushing in her ears and the frantic patter of her heart against her ribcage. Era collapsed on the ground the moment she was able, leaning against a wall of the stadium and gasping for breath. She wasn't tired. On the contrary, she felt like she could run another race and then some. Could fly along the rooftops with the wind in her teeth for hours and hours, until her body finally gave out beneath her. Adrenaline made her hands twitch, her eyes dart, her head swim with lights and colors and sound and... Oh, was that Bakugou? Was he coming towards her? He really shouldn't, because Era had a gun in her hands and was just thrill-hazed enough to use it.
Who the fuck are you?
He snarled, and it was a testament to his volume that Era could even hear him over the roar of the crowd. She blinked up at him for a moment, gouging whether or not she actually wanted to have this conversation. Past the fuming blonde's shoulder, Era could just make out more students crossing the finish line. Was Shinsou part of that crowd? "I'm the girl who shot your ass," she muttered, slowly rising to her feet and pushing past Bakugou. "Or did you forget it already?"
What the fuck did you just say?
Era couldn't tell if it was a rhetorical question, or if the arena really was too loud for him to hear her. Either way, it wasn't really her problem.
Hey, I'm talking to you!
A hand on her wrist.
Take it, twist it, snap it, get it off!
Era ripped her hand from his grasp, shooting him a scathing glare that was only met by narrowed red eyes. "Don't touch me."
If you shoot me again, I'm gonna take that piece of shit you call a gun and beat you to death with it!
"I'm quaking," she said dryly, breaking their gaze as she continued towards where she thought she could catch a flash of purple hair. "I thought we were all just stepping stones to your victory. Seems to me like you're getting all worked up about a little nothing like me." An explosion near the back of her head left her ears ringing, her inner ear itching uncomfortably as residual heat simmered at her skin. Era sighed, turning to face the fuming boy. "Do you get like this every time someone beats you?"
Every time a shitty little extra like you decides she's hot shit because she somehow cheated a support item into the race. Yeah!
He snarled. "Do I intimidate you? Because you certainly don't intimidate me." Another series of explosions fizzled along his arms. All flash and no heat. He was conserving energy then, even in his anger. Interesting.
You better get scared of me, you! How typical of Class 1A to be such sore losers when beaten fair and square!
Era and Bakugou both snapped towards the newcomer, another blonde, with pale blue eyes and a smug expression. He stepped forward, stretching out his hand towards Era and ignoring Bakugou completely.
Please, I don't want you to think less of the hero cause because of these barbarians. You did an excellent job in that obstacle race. Your aim is incredible. Is it your quirk?
Era crossed her arms, eyes flicking down towards the outstretched hand and then back up at the boy, who withdrew it gracefully. No more touching. Not with the memory of clasping fingers tight around her wrist. "And you are?"
Oh, I apologize. I must seem as rude as this one, a brute here.
He gave a little laugh as Bakugou grew impossibly more furious.
Don't fucking... Oh, hey, Bakugou, man. I've been looking for you. They're gonna announce their next round soon, I think. We should head over.
A grinning boy with spiked red hair walked up, grabbed Bakugou by the arm, and began to forcibly drag him away, seemingly unaffected by the ceaseless explosions and the spitting rage.
Anyway, my name's Mineta,
said the newcomer pleasantly enough.
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I'm quite an enthusiast. Is your quirk something analytical in nature? I've noticed how you managed to dodge those mines as well. Some deft footwork, might I add. Very impressive.
He was laying on the compliments far too thick. This might have been the right play for a witless child, but Era could smell an ulterior motive from a mile away. She shot him an easy smile, pushing past him towards where she'd seen Shinsou. Sorry. Doesn't feel like it's in the spirit of the competition to just give away my quirk like that. Good luck with the next round. Monoma let out another peal of laughter, although this time it sounded a little more strained.
Fair enough, I suppose. Good luck, and remember who your friends are.
Fucking ominous. And Shinsou got on her ass for trying to sound like a mob boss. At least she meant everything she said, had the skills to back it up. These kids were just... well, they were just kids, playing at something they didn't understand. Era ground her teeth, stuffing that thought into a box before it could fester into something else. She managed to find Shinsou just as Midnight called them all up towards the stage to announce the rankings in their next trial, nudging him in the shoulder with the hint of a smile. Hey, how did it go? That was a little rough, I won't lie, he admitted. My head hurts a bit. Era shot him an appraising glance through narrowed eyes. You gonna be good for the next round? He waved her off. Yeah, 5 minutes and I'll be fine. How about you? I saw some of the chaos. You worried about Bakugou? Era scoffed. If that kid comes after me, I know exactly how to deal with it. She adjusted the strap on her rifle to emphasize her point, before frowning up towards the standings. I'm more worried about the danger I don't know. Meaning? Class 1B is suspiciously middling, don't you think? Class 1A varies wildly, but 1B has managed to stay within the top 40 without any standouts. Shinsou stared up at the rankings as well, brow furrowing. You think they planned it? I think they're planning something. Do you know Monoma Nito? Shinsou huffed. Unfortunately, he's an ass. He's an ass who's trying to scope out the competition. He tried to chat me up about my quirk. I bet he's just concerned because he doesn't fucking know it. You, me, and Hatsume are all unknowns. Era paused, considering. Actually, who knows your quirk? Have you used it during class with 1A? Kind of. I think they know it's some kind of mental suggestion, but they don't know the specifics. Okay, great. And 1B doesn't know it at all, so... I'm at an advantage against the 1B students, Shinsou supplied. 1A will know to suspect something, but they won't know what. 1B doesn't have that benefit. Era tapped her nose. Ding ding, you get a prize. You're obnoxious, said Shinsou, rolling his eyes and shoving her in the shoulder. Era just laughed, whatever retort she could have made cut off by Midnight's next announcement. The second round would be a cavalry battle. What the fuck is a cavalry battle? Muttered Era beneath her breath, ignoring the incredulous look that Shinsou shot her way. She knew the two words, cavalry, battle, but there were no horses that she could see, and though she was definitely prepared for a scuffle, Era wasn't quite sure she'd call anything that could be hosted in this stadium a battle in the traditional sense. The rules, at least, were simple enough for her to grasp, as was the reasoning behind giving more points to those who ranked higher up in the obstacle race. Never let it be said that UA didn't have an eye for drama. Shinsou would have 80 points, Era would have 200, and Midoriya... Oh dear, poor kid looked petrified. The instant Midnight announced that it was time for them to start planning, Era pulled Shinsou to the side. We can't go after 10 million. He was already nodding. Todoroki and Bakugou are definitely going to go for it. I don't think we can take them on all at once. Todoroki? That's the ice kid? I think it's ice and fire. Really? Era glanced towards where the boy was assembling his own team. I never saw him use fire. I don't know. I think it's like a thing. Shinsou scowled at Era's unimpressed expression. Look, I'm only there for like half of the time. I can miss things, okay? Excuses, excuses. Her gaze drifted to the other students milling about, mentally tallying up the points. We only have 280 between the two of us. Who else do you think we can convince to join? Maybe that crazy support course girl. Hatsume. We might be able to. We'd have to spin it, though. Maybe I can convince her of like an underdog thing. Wait, what? I thought you two were friends. Era snorted. We're acquaintances. She gives me gear to test, I explode. She fixes gear, repeat process. I feel like you're misreading the situation. She built you a gun. A really, really cool gun. And I feel like you're not exactly the authority on interpersonal relationships, said Era with a scowl. Besides, I built most of the gun. She just provided some crucial assistance. Didn't she ask you to call her May that one time? We're getting off topic. Era snapped with a wave of her hand. My point is, we can't rely on our own headband to get to the top 4, so we can't just play it safe and run away. We need to go on the offensive. 1B's going to stick together, said Shinsou grimly. If they really plan for this, they're going to collaborate to steal higher scores from the 1A kids. There's the nerd we know and love. Era shrugged off another shove with a grin. Anyway, yeah, that sounds like their plan. Which means we're off their radar too. Shinsou answered her smile with his own. Big mistake. I'm sure you can convince a couple kids to give up their headbands, right? He frowned thoughtfully. I can control 4 people at once. Anything more than that and it starts to get a little shaky. What about basic commands? Just, I don't know, stop. Maybe. I haven't really had a lot of chances to practice it. Okay, well, that's fine. Even just taking one person out could probably throw off a group, especially if they don't expect it. Shinsou nodded, and the two of them went off in search of Hatsume. She wasn't particularly difficult to find, hovering around the other rapidly forming groups with a hand tapping thoughtfully against her chin as she muttered to herself. Hey, Hatsume! Called Era. Great job at the second obstacle. That grappling hook of yours is fantastic. Gotta be honest, I wasn't sure if it would have enough force to pierce the rock.
You dare question the capability of... Oh, hey, it's you!
Hatsume sprinted up to them, pushing her goggles up onto her forehead as she did.
Test subject! I heard you made quite a splash at the final obstacle.
Thought I told you to call me Era, or at least Suzuki, she grumbled.
And I told you to call me May, but here we are.
She dropped a crate on the ground and knelt over to begin rifling through it, missing the pointed glance that Shinsou shot Era's way. You want to join our team? He asked after Era ignored him with a huff. Hatsume glanced up, eyes glimmering with something dangerous.
Maybe. But what can you offer me? I could join 10 million over there.
She jabbed her thumb in the direction of Midoriya.
And all eyes would be on me and my babies.
Everyone loves an underdog story, offered Era. We'd be one of the lowest point totals, and the only team almost entirely made up of people not from the Aero course. Hatsume hummed, tapping at her chin.
Fair enough. But are you just going to be boring the whole round, or are you going to go for points?
With you and your babies, we could probably put on a show. Era grinned, let it slip into something feral, and found herself pleased when Hatsume matched it. Neither of us have flashy quirks, so your inventions could take center stage. You in or not?
In? Check out what I have.
As it turned out, the question wasn't what she had, but rather what she didn't. Era had thought with her testing out all of the gear and all, that she would have a pretty good grasp on the extent of Hatsume's arsenal, but apparently she had vastly underestimated both the girl's genius and her diligence. Okay, jetpack, yes. Hover shoes, yes. Grappling gun, yes. Era picked through a few more odd contraptions, narrowing her eyes as she tried to discern their function, before she raised her head to look over the sea of other students. We need a fourth. Any ideas? We could just go in with 3, said Shinsou, but Era was already shaking her head. Technical nightmare. We can't appear weak. Anyone in mind, then? I don't know any of the kids from 1B. The 1B kids are clearly doing their own thing, Era muttered, shooting a glance at where Monoma had gathered a sizable portion of his classmates. I don't want to get tangled up in that before this thing even starts. Let's stick to 1A. All right, who do you have in mind, then? Era hummed, standing up to approach a familiar head of green hair in the crowd.
You want me on your team, kiddo?
Asui looked... well, she didn't look much of anything. Pensive, maybe. Even Era found her a little difficult to read. Yeah, I think we've got a good shot at it, said Era, leading her over to the explosion of support gear they were sorting through. Hey, Hatsume, do you think those leg braces would work for her? Maybe it could increase her jumping power.
I haven't done that much testing on alternative physiologies, but I usually design with them in mind, so...
She hasn't said yes yet, guys, said Shinsou dryly.
No, I haven't,
affirmed Asui. She tapped a finger against her mouth thoughtfully.
Do you have a plan?
The plan's to win, said Era with a frenzied grin.
That's not really a plan.
Fine, I guess not. Era huffed, fiddling with her rifle before shooting a questioning glance at Shinsou. He just responded with a shrug and a nod. Great, so Shinsou's gonna brainwash the riders into stepping off their horses. It won't work on everyone, but if we pick our targets carefully, then we have a good shot. I have my gear for fending off people at range, and if you join, you'd also be able to do that with your tongue. You're also great for mobility, especially with Hatsume's gear. No one would be able to touch us.
You're not going for the 10 million points, then?
No, Todoroki and Bakugou will go for it, and I don't want to fuck with that. I'm not underestimating Midoriya again.
They are pretty hot-headed.
Asui glanced around at the gear, at Shinsou's bored expression, at Hatsume's gleeful muttering to herself as she checked over her inventions, and finally, back at Era.
You have an eye for strategy, even if it's the unconventional sort, and I know from the USJ that you work well under pressure. I'm in.
Era grinned triumphantly, repressing the urge to flinch at the mention of the USJ. Fuck yes. Welcome to the team. Shinsou tapped on her shoulder. Who's going to be the rider? Oh, I thought that was obvious. You. Me? I don't think either of you could carry me, and Hatsume's the best suited to use her own gear.
Don't sell yourself short,
countered Hatsume.
I seem to recall you operating a few of these in beta. I'm sure you could figure it out.
Era sighed. Fine, yes, I could probably use some of this stuff without blowing myself up. The point still stands. But are you sure? Shinsou rubbed the back of his neck. A tell. Don't you want to use your gun? I can use it and carry you at the same time. At his incredulous look, Era sighed. I've used rifles like this one-handed before. It throws off the aim a bit, but I can make it work. Besides, I should probably stick to the pistol for this anyway. It's less liable to make someone bleed.
Ooh, now that does sound fun.
Hatsume pushed her hover shoes into Era's hands as she spoke. Ah, she remembered these. Hopefully they didn't have an overheating problem anymore.
Does it really pierce skin at close range?
The airsoft does, yeah. I'll keep it in paintball mode for this. Hatsume, how the fuck do I put these on again?
You forgot to press the green button.
Oh, yeah, right. She always forgot that. Okay, fine, said Shinsou with a huff. I'll be the rider. Cool, because you didn't have a choice. Atsume, do you want the grappling gun or...
If you're wearing those boots, then you should take it. The combo is a thing of beauty. Should I take anything, or...
Asui looked between the two of them, seeming a little lost. Era glanced at the rest of her gear, all strewn about on the ground as they sorted out who would be carrying what. Change of plans. You put on the hover boots and the grappling gun. I'm going to carry Shinsou on my shoulders, and if you're floating, then we can drag you behind.
Good call.
And Asui can put on the leg braces to add to her mobility. You two can be the back horses. With the grappling gun and Asui's tongue, we can swing around fast and catch people off guard. And if we have to get out fast, I'll have the jetpack. We can make short hops. Asui can just jump unassisted while I use the jetpack to carry Shinsou and Hatsume. That way we can all make it out. Asui nodded.
Sounds good, kiddo. But I told you to call me Tsu.
Oh, sorry, Tsu. It was only fair, with her insistence that everyone call her Era. Still, it felt strange. Like she was being trusted with something. Which was always a mistake. Shinsou grimaced as they began to switch gear. You're going to carry me and the jetpack? Alone? You weigh what? 90 pounds soaking wet? It's fine. I do not. Okay, you know what? Fine. I just don't want to hear any complaints. Era stood with a huff, walking over to an unsuspecting Shinsou and grabbing him by the waist. She ignored his indignant squawk as she lifted him easily into the air. I think I can handle it, she said with a smirk, setting him back down gently and ignoring the way he smacked at her arms. You're actually the worst. Fuck you. Shinsou flopped onto the ground, muttering into the grass. I'm not that fucking skinny, you're just freakishly jacked. Hera shrugged. Maybe you should hit the gym, twig boy. Asshole.
The weak-minded always fear the truth.
Era reached out a hand, and Hatsume high-fived it without even looking up from fiddling with her inventions. I knew it, Shinsou groaned. You're both terrible influences on each other. And here you are, hanging out with both of us, said Era. What does that say about you? That I'm an idiot, probably. Era nodded sagely. And at last he sees the light.
They always do eventually,
said Hatsume, clipping a belt around her waist. You guys are the worst. Let's win this stupid thing. Fuck yeah. Era grinned and unholstered her pistol. Plus ultra style. End of chapter 33.